If God is all-powerful, why does evil still exist in our lives, causing so much suffering and pain? Why hasn't God destroyed the devil yet? This is an excellent theological question with a deep level of complexity. After all, if God is all-powerful, why doesn't He just wipe out evil from the world? Does this put God and the devil on equal footing, like in some kind of spiritual battle where both have similar powers? The first thing we need to understand is that God and the devil are not equals. Many people imagine a battle between good and evil as if God and Satan are on opposite sides, fighting with the same kind of power. But that's not how it works. What I'm about to say might sound shocking, but stick with me to understand my point. God, in His infinite wisdom, doesn't fight the devil using God's powers. Why? Because He doesn't need to. If God fought the devil like God, there wouldn't be a fight. It would be a massacre. God's power isn't about destroying enemies with brute force. It's about revealing His character, a character that's completely opposite to Satan's. Satan is called the father of lies, a being who opposes everything good and true. But God? God is the Father of truth. He doesn't need to get into a power struggle with Satan because, in the end, the truth always prevails. God wins not by sheer power, but by being who He is. My friends, God has all the power in the universe, but He chooses not to use that power to fight the devil or force anyone to follow Him. That might seem strange, but that's exactly how God handles the conflict between good and evil. He allows suffering to exist, just like He did with Job, to reveal something much deeper. God doesn't want to be a dictator. To Him, power isn't about using His abilities to destroy others. It's about knowing you can, but choosing not to. See the subtlety? God could wipe out evil in an instant, but that would remove something essential, our freedom to choose. If God destroyed the devil right now, He would be forcing humanity to follow Him out of fear, not love or conviction. And that's not what He wants. He allows things to happen because He wants each of us to see, through our own experiences, that evil has no power compared to God's truth and character. As hard as it is, suffering ends up revealing that God doesn't act by force, but by justice. Think about it. Jesus could have defeated evil any way He wanted, couldn't He? He had all the power in the universe in His hands, but instead, He chose the cross. And you might wonder, why did He do that? Why didn't He just use His power to fix everything? That's where the point lies. Jesus didn't just want to defeat evil. He wanted to teach us something much bigger. On the cross, He didn't show the power of force, but the power of love and humility. He could have ended it all, could have made the angels come down and destroy His enemies. But He chose to humble Himself, to suffer like a lamb, and that was a deliberate choice, full of purpose. What happened on the cross wasn't a defeat. It was the greatest victory ever, but a victory the world wasn't expecting. Instead of fighting, Jesus defeated evil by showing that love is stronger than anything. He didn't need to impose or show physical strength. He showed us that the way to overcome evil is actually the opposite. And this is where we start to understand something deep. The true power of God isn't in showing strength, but in holding it back out of love. You know what's most impressive about this? The fact that God, instead of destroying evil with a simple act of force, gives us the freedom to choose. And that changes how we see power entirely. The world often thinks of power as something that imposes, that dominates. But God's concept of power is different. God shows us that real power is in allowing, in giving humanity the space to choose its own path. That's exactly what Jesus did when He surrendered on the cross. He showed us that self-sacrifice and humility are actually the height of power. God doesn't want to control us by force. The big mystery here is that His power is revealed most fully when He chooses not to use all His strength when He invites us to decide for ourselves. And that's how Jesus overcame evil, not by force, but by His character, by the love He showed through His sacrifice. This breaks the idea that power only comes with authority or control. And this choice, this freedom God gives us, reveals something even deeper about Satan's position. We might fall into the trap of thinking Satan is God's great rival, like he's an opponent on the same level. But the reality is very different. Satan is not an equal to God. He doesn't have the same power, the same authority. Yes, he is an enemy, but not of God. He's the enemy of humanity and the church. Satan works against us, trying to pull us away from God, trying to deceive us. But he doesn't have total freedom. His limits are set by God. Everything he does is under God's sovereign control. And this completely changes how we see evil in the world. Satan can try to harm us, confuse us, but he doesn't have the final word. My friends, Satan can only go as far as God allows. He's not a force out of control. You're not a ship lost at sea. Maybe you're going through a tough time in life right now. Things aren't making sense, and the weight of suffering is heavy on your soul. But if you've made it this far, there's something important you need to hear. God sees you. He knows your pain, your struggle. And as hard as the path is right now, this is not the end of your story. You see, we often ask why God allows certain things to happen. Remember, suffering is not the final chapter. God doesn't abandon us in the middle of the storm. He gives us strength to keep going even when everything seems to be falling apart. The same God who allowed Job to go through intense pain was the God who restored everything in his life. The pain you feel today doesn't define who you are, and more importantly, it doesn't define what God is preparing for you. He doesn't let anything happen in vain. Every tear, every sleepless night, every prayer that feels unanswered, all of it is seen and counted by God. And trust me, He has something bigger in store for your life. What God wants from you, especially in these tough moments, is for you to draw closer to Him. Trust, even when you don't understand the why. It's in these moments that God's character shines brightest, showing that His love is greater than any pain or problem we face. Think about all the hard things you've been through in life, and God never stopped taking care of you. He's right there, in the silence, waiting for you to rest in Him. Because in the end, His victory was already won on the cross, and that victory is yours too. God is working on your behalf even when you can't see it. God bless you and your family.